I'm so excited today to be joined with Isaiah Martin on this Saturday morning in an exclusive interview just hours after Isaiah was released from Texas jail custody. Isaiah, I want to talk about why you were in custody in the first place, but how are you this morning?
Well, first off, Aaron, thanks for having me. I feel a lot of different emotions, but my resolve to fight for the people of our state can never be stronger. Ultimately, what happened was a bunch of Republicans were very concerned about the fact that I went up and spoke my mind, by the fact that they're destroying the economy, destroying the state. And, look, spent a lot of time in jail, I guess 30 hours per se, but I just couldn't be more thankful for the millions of people that have spoke out about this, the people across our state, people in our district, and ready to continue that fight because that's exactly what we need right now.
So I want to talk about how jail was for those 30 hours that you were in jail, but I want to start by kind of setting the scene here a little bit for folks. So people for those who don't know, what is happening in Texas right now and what landed you in custody?
Right. So right now, currently, Texas Republicans are trying to do a mid-decade redistricting session in which they're effectively trying to, at Trump's command, gerrymander 5 Democrats out of their seats. So as a result of that, they're trying to carve up and splice up districts wherever they can. One of them includes my district, the 18th Congressional District. So they had a public testimony on Thursday in which they invited members of the public to go and speak about this. Now, mind you, this is before they release any maps. All we know is that they're going to gerrymander 5 Democrats out of their seats, and they're going to push this through whether we like it or not. And so I get to this committee, and I see all of these Republican representatives. They're on their phones and not really paying attention. Some of them are laughing. Some of them are smirking as people are testifying. I had enough. And so I went up, I testified, and the rest is history, per se.
When you were testifying, they say you went overtime, and you did go overtime based on
Hmm.
what the video shows. But then
Yeah,
these officers kind of swarmed you, and then they threw you to the ground.
absolutely.
Is that normal?
No, no, absolutely not. I mean, they came up and they were very aggressive, of course. I mean, it's what they do. And as they were pushing me out, they pushed me down to the ground. I mean, it's what happens with them because they were very frustrated. You could very tell the look on their faces as they were coming up. They're very mad. I guess it said some things that they didn't like about their senile, dilapidated Epstein partying with president, but hey, that's just it.
Well, you're running Texas's 18th congressional district. That's a seat that actually could be impacted by
Correct.
redistricting, right? What are you hearing in terms of redistricting right now? Are they targeting your seat? Maybe even
Absolutely.
after your arrest.
Yeah. So originally the DOJ had put out a letter in which they included 4 congressional seats that they wanted to effectively eliminate in Texas.
Hmm.
Our seat, the 18th Congressional District, was one of those. Now, Trump then upped that up to 5 seats. He said, basically, give me another one. So find 5 congressional seats. Now, look, I do know this about Texas. They're very vindictive. But what I do know is that the resolve of the people of our district is even stronger. And
Mhm.
so, look, they can do whatever they want. They can try to carve out my apartment. I don't really care what they do because ultimately I'm not going to stop fighting. And I want those folks that are in the Texas state legislature, the Republicans, to know that you didn't stop anything. You just made me go harder and go even stronger.
So you were arrested in the Texas state capitol, and then we'll kind of walk me through this. You were let out. Where'd you go? Where'd they take you?
Well, to be honest with you, Aaron, I didn't even know I was going to get arrested.
Okay.
Basically what happened, they pushed me out of the hearing room
Yeah.
and they lead me to this elevator in which they bring me up to the outside portion of the Texas State Capitol. And my ankle was really hurt at the time. And so I remember like just saying like, man, my ankle's hurt. And so this guy who comes up, I think he was a paramedic, I'm not sure, but he was some type of medical guy. He was looking at my ankle and he was like, yeah, it's pretty, you know, I'm sure it hurts, but you just got to put some ice on and stuff when you get home. And, I looked at some of the officers that were around. They didn't really, I mean, they thought it was just going to be like, okay, you can go, like,
Right.
whatever. But the principal guy, the one that tackled me to the ground, walks away for a second. He takes a phone call and he walks away and he's on the phone with somebody and he's pacing back and forth. And I couldn't tell who he was on the phone with. And so the officers were basically like, Isaiah, you can pretty much go. And he goes and he yells from about 100 yards away, says, no, 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 he can't go yet. And that's what kind of tipped me off. I was like, okay, I want to know what's going on. So the guy then comes up and he says, we're going to place you under arrest for trespassing, resisting arrest, and disturbing a public meeting. And I said, resisting arrest? I said, first of all, you didn't even tell me you're an officer. How could you do something like that? It doesn't even make any sense. And he comes forward and he says, well, you can basically explain it to the judge. They didn't read me my rights. They didn't do anything like that. They just basically stuck me into a car and then took me off to jail. It was a very interesting experience, to say the least.
So you get to jail. Did they tell you what you're charged with? Did they say you can have an attorney? Because typically, when you're arrested, you're read your Miranda rights. You're entitled to a lawyer. You're kind of put in a holding cell. You're processed, and then you're entitled to meet a lawyer. Is that what happened here?
No, I mean, when I got to the jail, they eventually said that, I could get an attorney. And from there, they said, you could get an attorney after some time, you'd be able to speak to them or whatever. But I never got to see them throughout my entire experience. I never got to see an attorney. I basically got to jail and I got taken to this area, called intake, in
Okay.
which I was around a bunch of other inmates who were actually very friendly. We had I actually did a town hall for them. They came up and they asked me basically what I was charged with. And I told them, I was like, look, it's basically some political BS. And I told them I was running for Congress. And they were like, what? No way. And they started asking me questions about like how government works. And, one guy was like, Isaiah, when you get to Washington, you gotta get rid of the tariffs because they fucking, or, they suck is basically what he said. Yeah. And so they just kept on asking me questions about government and all these things. And, they were really excited for me to be in there, to say the least.
So you're sitting in this intake facility. You have guys asking you about tariffs and how government works. Are you at all kind of scared? I mean, you've never been in jail before. This is your first time spending a night in jail. Jail, for those who don't know, who are watching, you have everyone from someone who's a congressional candidate resisting arrest to murderers, and they just throw you all together. Were you scared at all?
Um, no, actually. And the reason is because, the inmates were actually really chill. They were very excited about me being in there, which I thought was interesting. I
Yeah.
didn't know that I expected that reaction, to say the least. But they were very excited for me to be there. And once they found out that I was running for Congress, they all kind of gathered around and just started asking me questions about like how stuff works. It was very
Right.
interesting.
That's interesting. Now, you get into this intake facility. You're then, I'm assuming, assigned your own cell at some point.
hmm
Did you ever expect to actually spend a night in jail? Or did you actually expect to just kind of get processed and then let out?
No, I thought that, no, I thought that it was going to be like one of those things where I didn't even think I was going to go to a cell personally. I thought that I was
Right.
just going to get processed, get fingerprinted, mugshot or whatever, and then, go about my way. And I remember I actually had a phone call to my brother originally, and I told him like, hey, it's going to be probably a couple hours, probably just go get a hotel or whatever, and then I'll be out. And then I was talking to one of the other inmates. He was like, no, 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 that's not how this is going to work. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, you're going to be here for at least 24 hours. I said, no, no way. And all the other inmates were like, yeah, yeah, that's what's about to happen. So that was kind of like my first inkling or whatever about like the timing situation.
Yeah.
And then they assigned me to a cell. It was basically a single person solitary confinement cell. And I went in there and it just seemed like forever, to say the least.
Were you just kind of sitting there alone for what, a day? Was that really it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, so I was sitting there for a very long time. I was sitting in the cell. But to be honest with you, every 30 minutes a guard would come by and do like some wellness checks, I guess, to make sure
Hmm.
that you're okay. And I would make some conversations with him, and, ask him what time it was, stuff like that. And at one point he asked me, he's like, what are you in here for? And
Right.
I said, basically, political BS. And he was like, wow, that's insane. You shouldn't be here. That's insane. He just kept on saying, that's insane.
That,
So everybody in there, from the inmates to the guards to the counselors that were there, were all like, you shouldn't be here. This is nuts.
and then you were out. I mean, last night around 11 p.m. Eastern time or so, they let you out. I heard all charges dropped, which is interesting because why charge you and keep you for a night if they were just going to drop the charges the day after? What's your message to Texas Republicans in this moment?
Well, to be honest with you, Aaron, I had no idea that I was even going to get out when they let me out.
Mm.
What happened was, um, I was expecting to go see a judge, as I was told at some point
Hmm.
late last night, and they tell me to basically come, a certain way, and they lead me down a hallway. I walk down to the floor, and they basically say, "Okay, you're going to make that right, and you're going to get your stuff, and you're going to go." And I was shocked. I was like, "What? Like, what
Mm.
happened?" But anyways, to those Texas Republicans, my message to you is you didn't stop anything. You tried your hardest to silence me. You tried your hardest to go and squash dissent, but you failed. And all you ended up doing was just energizing millions of people across this country, hundreds of thousands of people within our 18th congressional district to understand that we're not afraid of you. You can try to silence us. You can try to go and detain us. We're going to continue to keep coming because what you've done to our state is absolutely terrible. And we're all going to be able to go stand up and fight back against it no matter what the costs are and whatever you try to throw our way.
Well, you heard it here first. Isaiah, if people want to support your campaign in this moment, because you're still running for Congress, what can they do right now?
Absolutely. Folks can go to isaiahmartin.org, ISAIAHMARTIN.org. Chip into the campaign. It really does mean a lot. Also, you can sign up to volunteer at isaiahmartin.org as well, ISAIAHMARTIN.org. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming on.